Welcome everyone to this live stream. We are finally back live, fully set up here, back in beautiful Berlin. I hope audio is okay. Couldn't check it because Pulse Audio. I have something on the VU meter, but Pulse Audio doesn't allow me headphone output monitor now because it's Pulse Audio. Anyway, for those recurring viewers, subscribers, fans and everyone, I finally figured out we had here the recurring issue with YouTube live beta dashboard, and as you see we are back live from Linux after over a week of struggling. Also, when you wonder why does all the YouTube stuff take so long, you put things left and right, what you were working with, and then you analyze your failing YouTube live beta stuff. I suspected some browser compatibility stuff. Then by the way, this still doesn't explain why it works in Edge. So because, to summarize this, it only worked on macOS last week, the YouTube Live dashboard beta thing. I suspect some JavaScript incompatibility or CSS or whatever, although I didn't touch Firefox and Chrome. It also failed on Chrome and Firefox the same. And it also didn't work on test using Microsoft Windows with Chrome, also didn't work. And in Russia, it surprisingly worked. The live dashboard stuff, to my surprise, totally didn't expect that. Back in Berlin, again didn't work. Yesterday, like totally confusing here. Today I spent an extra hour, half an hour, when you wonder why does everything take too long and why is half an hour gone there and here. And yeah, so I spent half an hour, I had here the AMD Ryzen, everything set up, connected and booted and plugged in, and all the dongle goodness, HDMI and everything. And YouTube live dashboard still doesn't work, although it worked in Russia, right? So I thought VPN, something with a network here, cable, Vodafone, DOCSIS, something. 0-drop frames today, by the way, still didn't work. Then of course I connected to the VPN, but I knew already from yesterday, VPN to the data center of ours here somewhere in Germany, still didn't work, so could also not be network. Totally strange, because that worked in Russia as well. And then I thought, wait a second, in Russia I used the ThinkPad, which I would hold to the camera, but yeah, dongles and cables, because I had the Ryzen here. So usually I use the Mac Mini or the AMD Ryzen build. And can this be like CPU related or something? I plugged in the ThinkPad here, booted everything, plugged all the dongles in and everything and so on, and it works. So I still don't know why this live dashboard beta thing failed on me the last week, but on the ThinkPad it works. So CPU optimizations, I have so no idea. Also didn't get something like the browser isn't crashing, don't have something in the system log dmask or something. Also doesn't explain why it didn't work. Of course I was so smart on the first day with the surface testing with Google Chrome on Windows, where it also failed. Still doesn't explain why it failed on the Surface on Windows. So either they use something really strange here in the YouTube dashboard, like native code or WebAssembly or fun stuff like this. So anyway, it works. Still have to find out why it doesn't, because it's still the same system, right? It's exportable SSD here, the Samsung T2 or something. So yeah, totally mysterious. At least some progress. It's somehow with the CPU, something here. So you see a recurring theme here, IT in 2019. Everything complex and failing, bugs, peak bugs, and even on Linux strange stuff. Anyway, coming here to this week's or this couple of days, because so the last week's IT news, last time it crashed there a little bit, the Wi-Fi of the neighbor and whatever. So last stuff was a little bit half, but we have breaking news. Hacker released the first public jailbreak for up-to-date iPhones in years. And this is so crazy. I actually had this already, I had this news from Twitter already on my radar, because from friends and family on Twitter someone already posted Apple has reintroduced the security issue, because this is also, I had this news from Twitter, but now it's on voice, so it takes a longer article for you to share, read along at home. And yeah, so they have mistakenly, and again I've seen this early on Twitter, they have mistakenly made it a bit easier to hack iPhone users who are on the latest version of the mobile operating system iOS by unpatching. It's like, Seriously, in 2019, Apple pays $1 million or so, they said, soon for vulnerabilities, and they have nothing better to do than reintroducing a vulnerability they had previously fixed in 12.3. It's hilarious, and for that, they want to sell us their T2 security chip to unpatch the vulnerabilities. Anyway, it's hilarious. Let me just, nobody said something in the chat, so let me check. Yeah, actually I think audio should be good. Yeah, it's hilarious. Security researchers found this weekend that 12.4, the latest version, released in June, reintroduced a bug found by Google hacker that was fixed in 12.3. So right now, very good time if you are interested in iPhone jailbreaking on the latest version. I think they already released this somewhere. Yeah, and Apple did not immediately respond on request for comment. So this is so hilarious. I wanted to make this IT news to shed a light on not only the latest and greatest Samsung or so is amazing, but more so the quality of software. It's just hilarious. It's bugs and peak bugs, and specifically on macOS there's so many bugs that even I don't like to use it anymore, and then Apple unpatches $1 million vulnerability. I rest my case. But leave me in the comments below. I at least updated to this, and probably just for the sake of showing Apple the finger, will most likely jailbreak my iPhone. I've not jailbreaked an iPhone probably in a decade, but with this news it's probably time to get back to this. In similar amazing news, someone's 8-year-old hacked around Apple's screen time, discovering a loophole that they consider iMessage widgets social networking instead of a category the parent app comes from. YouTube widget allows full viewing, circumventing locked apps category time limits. So yeah, 2019, not only Apple unpatches vulnerabilities, also 8-year-old figure out how to unlimit use iMessage. Thumbs up for this. This 8-year-old certainly has a great future ahead of themselves there on security research and stuff, or development or other fun tinkering and stuff. But yeah, 2019, Apple, the flagship of UI integration, and for the children, like T2 security chip and such, for the children, screen time stuff there, and yeah, 8-year-old figure out. And by the way, not the first time, right? I think this is, yes, so this is brand new, or quite August the 9th or something, I think. Yeah, August the 9th. And as far as I know, this is not the first time, right? So Apple has, as far as I remember, and this is what we do the IT news here for already a year, again and again, this kind of issues that you can open it through embedded whatever. So as far as I understand, it's like a year of this kind of issues, and still 8-year-old figure out new ways. I think maybe even my friend here in Berlin told me something of that sort with their kids. Anyway, amazing stuff. More amazing stuff, and this is so, it's like 2019, even Intel of all companies, and yes, they have a little bit, I just had a Xeon here, but it's on a motherboard now. They can't even like develop secure processors with Spectre and Meltdown and stuff. They can't even write a secure processor identification utility for Windows. So if you're on Windows and have this Intel stuff installed, you probably want to uninstall it or something, because it's severity rating high, escalating of privileges, deny of service, information disclosure. I probably need a button here, this famous Star Trek Next Generation facepalm, because seriously, right, this is, I mean, it's a small garbage tool of processor identification, but seriously, even that is not secure. It's like, not only do I rest my case, I have no words anymore. I mean, this is, yeah. Base score 8.2, so 2019 processor utility identification tools get a CVSS base score of 8.2. Well done, achievement unlocked. The best and the bravest and the potential security vulnerability of Intel's processor identification utility for Windows may allow escalation of privileges, denial of service, information disclosure. Intel is releasing a software update to mitigates the potential vulnerability. CVE 2019 11-163, insufficient access control to a hardware abstraction driver. Like, yeah, 2019, right? We need the microkernel is stable. It's hilarious. But looking forward to your comments below what you think about this. May allow unauthorized user to potentially enable escalation of privileges in line of service. So yeah, either you bombard the Windows message passing stuff there, or you just use a Intel CPU utility. It's hilarious. It's so funny. It's not funny anymore. It's, yeah, you name it. German news. This Vivy, or I don't even know, even as German, I don't know how to pronounce this crap. This is some health app of the health insurance of the single payer, or whatever this translates to English, our amazing health system that Germany is known and famous for, among other things, obviously. And so they developed an app, some of those health, and by the way, we have multiple health insurance, right? So it's like state mandated health insurance, but you can still choose. Still amazing, affordable stuff for the most part anyway. And they developed an app to share some information, I think, with I'm not using this because I, as developer, I'm not trusting with all the security vulnerabilities and peak bugs. I'm certainly not trusting my health information. Not that I would have too many, but anyway, such an app. But yeah, of course, it is not secure. And they just found out, so they updated their something, and they wanted to make the app better. Also, yeah, 2019, you want to make a health app better, and then you break it so that for some people that need quite some treatments, different medications and whatnot, they lose the data or lost the data of some user. Of course, they only, like Apple, they say only a small number, just they learn from the best, certainly from Apple, right? And but anyway, the number of affected people is unknown, and apparently they now blocked those users because they lost some of their prescription plan. And not that people forget to take their medication, they rather disabled their accounts, a couple of hundred users, because they somehow messed up their database interaction, displaying UI, whatever stuff. So yeah. There was also, also previously, so this comes after 2019, this comes after they previously found significant security issues there, of course, apparently allegedly to the previous article in 2018, and yeah, whatever, you name it, that's why I'm not using it, you get the idea. But everything needs to be connected to break and be insecure. Anyway, in more amazing news, IBM Prozessor-OMI breaks 650 gigabytes per second bandwidth here from hot chips. I translate here German news site, did not Google where to find it. Anyway, doesn't really matter. IBM Power 9. So either with 219 gigabytes from 8 terabyte of DDR4 memory read and write, or an advanced I/O variant with either 320 gigabyte per second or 650 gigabyte if you have less capacity. So apparently if you like kind of like bus load, similar where you would have like registered and fully buffered the stuff to have less load on the bus. So either high amount of memory or with less memory, faster, like twice as fast apparently, something of that sort. So yeah, amazing bandwidth coming if you can afford it. As other people asked me just yesterday, what do you think of this Raptor engineering? Of course, this PowerPC stuff. Not the cheapest, not the most affordable, but if you can afford it, then certainly you also get quite some bang for your buck there. In similar news just today, apparently also from a German site, but I translate, don't worry, Upmem, DDR4 memory modules with integrated processor, that is here from a French startup, from startup out of France. At the end of the year, they want to ship memory modules with integrated processors here, apparently 4 gigabyte DRAM, DDR4 2400 and 500 megahertz CPU here apparently. And this they write here allegedly because driving memory is quite memory intense, they think or promote, or that is their idea, to move the processing cores directly close to the memory to avoid this kind of high energy efficient memory bus loss or kind of. And of course you need special support to this, so of course you need like a driver or something. Also a little bit, for me this is a little bit Frankenstein setup. I wonder how well this works. I wonder if this is like shows up like ARM or something, not really sure if they, so it's like DPUs, whatever that means actually. So this is like 500 megahertz, deep in order, 14 pipeline in order whatsoever. So yeah, really curious if this is of any use. Of course, this makes the memory use more power, so those consume 1.2 watt additionally, I think. So whole DIMM consumes 20 watt of power, so a little bit strange setup. Really wonder how efficient this really is, how much this 500 megahertz of small CPU is worth in terms of processing CPU power, especially if you have 20 watts energy consumption just for this embedded DPUs. So yeah, apparently with a 128 gigabyte configuration of memory you would have 2048 DPUs. It's a little bit, sounds a little bit like cell or DPU kind of massive parallel processing, maybe for deep learning. I could imagine, of course, they write here, it might be necessary to update the BIOS. Yeah, good luck finding your special Snowflake BIOS. Maybe with Google and Amazon, their special server. Yeah, really wondering how well this works out, if we ever hear about this. But again, these are this kind of crazy startup ideas, right? People get together, have crazy ideas and really implement this. In similar news of what I run here, this amazing insecure and breaking news channel for huge survey of firmware finds no security gains in 15 years. Yeah, probably until next live stream I grab here the TNG facepalm. So yeah, just as I unfortunately reiterate here, and why after 15 years soon in the business, I feel like we need to point this more out. There needs to be more point of this is not okay. All the vulnerabilities, this is not how it should be. Also firmware, stop maybe. One thing, well, Rust of course is a relatively good thing, although I don't agree really with the ecosystem with Cargo and yeah, mostly Cargo actually, and their bootstrapping of Rust of course. But otherwise C and C++ is not so bad. Well, especially I personally not the greatest fan of pure old-fashioned C, maybe at least a little bit C++ with helping classes and some safeguards. But in any case, even if you use C, maybe finally stop using those old-fashioned C strings. All these functions, of course, highly error-prone. Even myself, we sometimes use them, and even I consider me quite advanced there on this kind of low-level fiddling. And even I, every now and then, especially like in our scanner drivers, especially as some scanner drivers have some fancy menus and you need to do a little bit of more string handling and stuff, and obviously even we make sometimes mistakes that we usually find ourselves in while development and stuff. So this is why even we should get away with this. It's a little bit that this is from our open source sane history, a little old-fashioned C code there in our pure base of scanner drivers. We probably, but there you see even ourselves after so many years, 20 years of scanner drivers, the problem is I can't rewrite this from scratch, right? This supports 400 scanner drivers. We have old scanner drivers, they support like 400 something, and new drivers, some more. As the new drivers, by the way, written in Lua, are much more amazing. And yeah, I think even especially looking at the Linux kernel, Xorg, Mesa, we probably should really do away with old-fashioned C handling, string handling. This is so error-prone. String copy, string cut, and all the on the stack or allocated and off by something, buffer over, underrun. Basically, software usually is full with this, especially firmware and the Linux kernel. And although they do a relatively good job, but you see from the latest weekly minor or half-weekly minor Linux kernel patch, yeah, we probably should really stop developing software like this. Is my own summary of this. So they looked here, a huge survey, and they found this is the networking hardware giant Netgear issues a security advisory for one of its many products. The company is careful to include a bit of boilerplate text in the end, acknowledging the work of independent researchers. Something what? Can you know why is this here? Can this not go away? Yeah, maybe. Nobody's trying, says the chief scientist, Cyber Independent Testing Lab, a non-profit organization. We found no consistency in a vendor or product line doing better or showing improvements. There was no evidence that anybody is making a concerted effort to address the safety, hygiene of the product, she said. Yeah, my impression, peak bugs. I mean, yeah, and Apple, I mean, seriously, Apple just unpatched their major security vulnerability. It's said, yeah. The study surveyed firmware from 18 vendors, ASUS, D-Link, Linksys, Netgear, Ubiquiti, and others. In all, more than 6,000 firmware versions were analyzed, totaling close to 3 million binaries created from 2003 to 2018 in the first. Yeah, also this is Internet of Stuff, right, where I always call out access to reliable firmware update methods when I say a smoke detector, a thermostat, a fan controller, a toaster, coffee machine. Basically, what I already said the last months, you barely get updates for any of those. Small startups go out of business. And yeah, the situation is not amazing. And this is why with the increasing networked, interconnected human society and all the Internet of Thing devices, we really need to do better. There need to be some reliable way to get firmware updates, and yeah, also they like for smoke detectors and stuff, light bulbs and all this fun stuff. And on top of this, we really need to develop software. And from now on, I think really, as like vendors networking stuff like D-Link, Netgear, Linksys, they need to stop. I think probably to summarize it, also, but leave me in the comments below, we really probably need to stop using C. You at least use C++ with a little bit more, less error-prone string method. Certainly string the number one reason of buffer under and overflows. And again, Rust could help, but I personally have problems with the ecosystem, with the hundreds of micro dependencies, and but certainly Rust could be one stuff. Also, personally think managed languages, including Lua, is amazing, small and beautiful. Also, maybe do not include all the frameworks. Keep stuff more minimal, simple, and not put like ship your firmware with 20, 30, 40, 50 frameworks that maybe half of them you don't even need. Basically keep stuff maintainable, and yeah, when you find something that you at least can push firmware out. Also, zooming you're not amazing in Chrome, fortunately. Anyway, how to read and can't zoom this. Internet of Things are connected to the net and are comments in the audience from Dave. Always. People don't understand web development. It would be better if things made OS with just basic HTTP stack. They made an OS with just a basic. Yeah, I totally agree. So the problem is also, of course, web browsers. Although this is firmware, this is different from web browsers. But you see, even I, from the beginning of the stream, I was fighting for over a week with my amazing live dashboard stuff here, not connecting. Now it connects again on just maybe another CPU. Really crazy stuff. Took me a week. Of course, totally unintuitive to find that. But browsers are really super complex with JavaScript, just Intom compiler, then native code, WebAssembly, all the decades of HTML, Canvas, and CSS stuff, and basically vendors putting everything they can find in the browser. But that is another end of the spectrum in terms of end users. But yeah, maybe I have here this ongoing this like microkernel, soon to be continued. And maybe we should create more examples of how to write less error-prone level code, which is exactly what my intention was there with microkernel concepts and making stuff more fine-grained, encapsulated. And I said in the huge philosophy video where I speculated that of course it's hard to sell, and one way to maybe sell this a little bit is just exactly in this firmware space. Although the problem I know very well from dealing with Chinese and Taiwanese companies, what I've done for 10 years in the scanner business at least, they rarely, with our exact scanner drivers, they rarely want to include third-party software there. So even if we make an amazing firmware, it is really hard to sell this to Taiwanese, Chinese, Korean, and all the other companies and stuff. Yep, I spoke on the iOS jailbreak on the very beginning. Helder, Hex, welcome. We could, when we are through, if you have questions or comments, that was the very first, if you want to rewind or watch it later. If there's something interesting, if you have stuff to add, you can comment now, or we at the end go back to this. What I found funny is Nvidia CEO says Google is the company's only customer building its own silicon at scale. I find this a little bit funny that they are like, it sounds a little bit like they are not worried by other companies like Amazon, Facebook or Tesla. And those companies who license or integrate Nvidia's graphic cards and have kicked off chip development projects. However, in terms of Nvidia, so they right here, it's not really one I know that have silicon that's really in production. The company would be Google, they say. And in my opinion, I think in Nvidia's position, I would be a little bit worried. Not only is AMD right now very well present and has very outstanding silicon there on the market, of course more on the CPU side, but the AMD DNA, Radeon DNA, certainly quite on a similar level, and for me anyway preferable, even if it's 5 or 10% slower maybe in some cases or whatnot. I take the open source driver any day of the week. I would like basically not even take an Nvidia card for free. But if you look on this, in the mobile space there is so much competition for over a decade. Initially Apple used PowerVR from Imagination Tech. They now have, even Apple has their own GPU, right? And I would even be worried there. So even Apple has apparently also some issue with Nvidia, which is why they apparently have the last years switched back to AMD GPUs when they are, for the cases they are using those. And Google has maybe some of their own silicon, Facebook and Amazon their own server systems. So the competition is huge in this space. In the mobile space, there's also, I think, what was it, Etna Vivante, and also ARM has Mali and all the other GPUs. So in mobile space, there is so much competition, and especially with Nvidia not having an open source driver there, if they are not careful, I would think Nvidia has a rough future ahead. Of course, they have fast, if you want a binary-only driver, GPU, but the future with AI, and you have seen there was in earlier news here today, this CPU-attached memory stuff, and all the, in previous months, news, artificial intelligence, neural network chips. So I would be a little bit more careful. Of course, the CEO always needs to say everything is amazing, but I would be a little bit more worried. But leave me your opinion, comments and suggestions down there in the comments. Comments in the audience, AA still uses C because most other languages try to make their own package manager and too slow to compile. Yeah, so package manager, I'm not the greatest fan. This is my biggest critique. Maybe I would be basically a huge fan of Rust, but this is why people think I flame war there on Reddit. No, I have productive critiques that I can't even package it. Maybe even that my YouTube dashboard is not working. Maybe that's even a Rust fault. But this would not explain why it doesn't work with Chrome. It's so strange, this YouTube dashboard stuff. Anyway, because this Rust compiler, we still in T2, normally we transform all the compiler flags to whatever you selected. So if you select core to do and O2 optimization, because you want that your external SSD just works on everything, just no, right now it somehow doesn't. I still need to wrap Rust because Rust is using its own optimization. So there's the next thing, right? Doing everything themselves in their package management, 150 micro dependencies, amazingness. So I still need soon to wire up our sandbox wrapping stuff so that Rust stuff is getting the right optimization flags, because right now it's whatever defaulting stuff. It's of course not right, not in a controlled way that reproducible build and what the user selected and once should get. Helder says, thought Novo was an open source NVIDIA driver. Yeah, so of course Novo is an open source NVIDIA driver, but it's community driven and they don't have specifications. They reverse engineer everything, which is a pain in the ass. So for this, NVIDIA doesn't get thumbs up. They get thumbs down for not releasing specs. And also, so Novo, whatever, is not the most amazing because they need to reverse engineer everything, so performance is not amazing as it should be. Also, the firmware needs to be signed, right? So the Novo developers can't even load the latest firmware because it's cryptographically signed, and they are waiting for NVIDIA to release the firmware. And without the firmware for the microcontroller, even like reclocking, so it's this open source Novo driver, the card stays at the boot clock, which often is not amazing. At least the last year's cards stay at boot clock. So it usually often the safest, lowest performance level, not amazing. And yeah, but anyway, I can't support this if they don't release specs. That's what all my previous videos of GPU work. You see even how hard it is with spec, and it's like 100 times harder without the spec, obviously. So also, the Novo developers probably could theoretically trace writing the firmware from the binary-only blob, but they say it's a little bit difficult and tricky, and yeah, probably it could be done, but yeah, you see the firmware also binary-only, even binary-only firmware, not amazing. Also, you see how much a whole bitch NVIDIA is that they can't even get their act together, and for many years, like the last 3 years or something, or more, plus minus give or take a year, does not have released firmware. So this is really a huge two thumbs down there for NVIDIA. Totally not, they are not helpful, and they're even like the opposite of negative helpful there. Dave writes, NVIDIA cards tend to be more stable when gaming, at least on Windows. Yeah, but this is most likely only a driver issue. For me, AMD certainly is quite good here on Linux. And I understand, yeah, the last and previous last year's cards were maybe a little bit energy efficient on the NVIDIA side and a little bit less energy and more performance maybe, but yeah. But on Windows it's a driver issue, which most likely anyway. Old Trupot, what I know, it's an old Trupot. AMD still shipping their reference cards with a single blower fan. Yeah, so the single blower fan I mentioned in yesterday's is also, I mentioned this yesterday. I wanted to order this 5700 to stack up here our new Linux desktop amazing workstation game after decades of Mac stuff, to have more flexible PC stuff. And yeah, the funny thing is I wanted to order a reference card that I thought like is the best amazing thing, reference card, like the vendor should know what they are doing, and then you see the reviews from other YouTubers and such, and then yeah, fan is not amazing, thermal running at the thermal design ceiling there. Certainly not amazing, that is true. But yeah, so this is why I will most likely get something like the Sapphire or something soon, Radeon RDNA 5700 or something of that sort. More news, I think we were done with it, right, Nvidia, yeah. So Google wants to deprecate here, Google's internal intent to deprecate FTP support. I find this a little bit hilarious. They write here, motivation, the current FTP implementation in Google Chrome has no support, also some more, encrypted connections, FTPS, no proxies, usage of FTP in browsers is sufficient low that it's no longer viable to invest improving, so they want to Google Chrome 72 Plus remove support for fetching documents, sub-resources over FTP and rendering of top-level FTP resources. Currently navigation FTP URLs results in showing a directory listing download. So I find this a little bit silly, right? Of all the super complex stuff, there's JavaScript, JIT, native code, WebAssembly, everything, and this little code of FTP. This is, of course, most users may not use it, of course, but if you load some BIOS manual or open source stuff from, of course, the latest, our own and others, Xorg, GitHub and stuff, they of course usually have HTTP, and I personally not the greatest fan. I barely used FTP, but I find this a little bit silly that if you are browsing some old-fashioned directory listing of vintage up and down retroware, you can't even maybe soon get the directory listing. I find this a little bit stupid. Yeah, so I mean, the FTP servers, it's hilarious that such a simple thing had so many, even decades ago, right? The security nightmares that decades ago have been FTP servers, so not a new thing, but anyway, in my opinion, this is silly too. If they really want to remove this completely, this is hilarious. Post will fail to resolve or recognize FTP URLs instead of browsing will attempt to invoke a default handler determined by the underlying platform here. So this is not amazing in my opinion. I mean, this few hundred lines of code for FTP, it's a joke. I would rather certainly have a browser to be able to display me old-fashioned abandonware, university, BIOS update manual. It's hilarious. Oh, so many advertisements. Let's close all this crap here and not know and yeah. To patch Windows or not, do you? So yeah, the latest Windows patch, apparently this is so hilarious from all the peak bugs and failing stuff. And so yeah, so apparently the latest Windows patch, which we of course not a huge Windows user here, so you probably can choose if you apply this patch, then you get broken Visual Basic apps, which is of course hilarious, right? Compatibility wise, that with all the compatibility over the decades, like now that eventually they break Visual Basic because of whatever old-fashioned cross-vulnerable AP fluff they use there. But yeah, there you have it. Either you are secure or you have Visual Basic apps. At least some, not all maybe, but yeah. It's a little bit, if you're running Windows and having troubles with app scripts or macros this week, it could be because Microsoft's August security update, apps that use Visual Basic 6 may stop responding with error after the update from Tuesday, may have installed, yeah, whatever. You guessed the idea, peak bugs, insecurity stuff, or breaking and failing stuff. In similar news, also Microsoft 365 and 2000 EMF files not showing up in Windows 7 after recent updates. So if you're still using Windows 7, maybe it's a little bit hilarious in my opinion, but also honestly, in my opinion, Windows is a little bit too complex with all the error-prone and vintage old abandoned APIs and ABIs and fun stuff. So they write here, they program stat language R and have produced Word documents automatically from it that contains Word tables and figures. The figures are EMF plus files created from the R package dev EMF, and yeah, there you doesn't even anyway. Yeah, peak bugs. Also, yeah, to summarize, old-fashioned APIs, nothing per se against old-fashioned APIs, just on Windows maybe they're a little bit too old-fashioned, and then after decades of stuff, yeah, you still use this and eventually needs some security fixes, and then all the house of cards starts to fall apart. Yeah, also from the 7, yeah, they want everything to update, but even probably here, then you don't have Visual Basics anymore. So even if you update to Windows 10, then maybe your Visual Basic breaks. In similar amazing news, also like nowadays, right? Nowadays you get, so always need to take this with a grain of salt here. Yeah, Dave writes, Windows 7 is almost end of life. Yeah, but if you update, you have other challenges also. So maybe best upgrade to desktop Linux. But there you need to fight with Pulse Audio and whatever. Anyway, systemd stuff. But yeah, also nowadays you get news from Reddit. Not really sure how trustworthy that is, but this speaks a little bit of what I heard, seen, and is my experience that they try to reproduce 130 plus research papers about predicting the stock market, coding them from scratch and recorded the results. Here's what they learned. So where is it even? What removed? Wait a second, why is this removed? This is funny. Why is this removed? Anyway, so basically they couldn't reproduce any of these papers, no idea why this is removed. Maybe they made this up, but anyway, this story sounded plausible in what I often saw. Of course, now it's removed. I said already Reddit, and you need to take it with a grain of salt, but I've seen this over the years many times also in more serious news, wherever published, that people couldn't reproduce others people results, but whatever. Also in more insecure news, apparently German news, but I retranslate, maybe it's in the meantime on other news. They write here, dozens of nuclear power plants apparently running in Europe without sufficient approval. They write here, some investigative study found that a dozen of nuclear power plants all over Europe, surrounding neighbor states, and certainly also including Germany. And apparently German government knows about nothing, but at least maybe allegedly to this. So yeah, there you have it. Not only Boeing airplanes get self-certified, but apparently also nuclear power plants self-certification, some certificates missing, no problem. Some cracks here, some leaking stuff there, can't be too difficult, or can't be so. Anyway, yeah, maybe even some nuclear power plants. Well, anyway, independently of this news, allegedly anyway, in previous years' news, everyone probably read about cracks and leaking stuff, even including German power plants, you name it, and some more and some less. And maybe you have seen this currently very popular Chernobyl Netflix or wherever that was series. And in more amazing news, freaking solar roadways was yesterday. 2019 say hello to Friday for Future News. Ice-making submarines would pop out bergs that help fight climate change. So apparently they have the amazing idea. What is more amazing than failing freaking solar roadways? Certainly ice-making submarines. The latest crazy. I mean, Dave, certainly you are invited to make failing freaking ice-making submarine movies. They probably didn't really quite get the physics behind that. But anyways, as sad as climate crisis probably, in my opinion, is nothing to laugh too much about, but ice-making freaking submarines, 2019, amazing idea, you name it. Just that you heard about this. And anyway, not too high hopes there for the energy efficiency use of that idea, but I guess there are better lower hanging fruits in that regards. As Helder asks, yeah, back to the first story, now that we have so many people, if you're into jailbreaking your iPhone, now is a good time, as I said in the beginning of the live stream, as Apple has unpatched their huge security vulnerability of yestermonths or previous months, something of that regard. With that, thanks for watching. If someone has a comment right now, then right now is a good time to comment, share, like and subscribe. Otherwise, we are through with so many crazy, insecure news. Well, some were also amazing, of course, here in terms of upcoming high bandwidth, of course, but otherwise failing, freaking insecurity stuff in 2019, peak bugs, where you're looking left and right, you name it. There is removed Reddit algorithm. Thank you for that link. That is amazing. How did the researchers find that? Did they diff the updates? I have no idea, but I've seen this before. It was on Vice. I've seen this already in my Twitter. Also, you can, if you want to follow all my crazy random tweets there, you can certainly do that. And one of those friends and family connected tweets there, I've seen this already probably on Friday or so. So maybe an obvious thing would, of course, you have your stack of vulnerabilities and you, of course, probably can program this, which, by the way, is a good point. I probably wanted to mention this. So you would think that those security researchers, they probably have this scripted, they have a database or list or compiled files of all the vulnerabilities, and you certainly can iterate through them and try them, brute force all your thousands of them. And I would expect, I wanted probably to say this, and thank you for reminding me, Apple of all companies should certainly have this kind of vulnerability database and run it automatically against each iOS release, at least if I would have such a company. And maybe some year with all our increasingly successful YouTube channel, maybe a couple of years we will have. I would certainly do this, automatically scan all the, well, basically we have also tested, right? Even for our small unsuccessful few men company, we have even for exact image and stuff a test suite. So we run automatically when we develop on barcode recognition, image processing, we have a test suite for loading BMP JPEGs. By the way, this is not open source. The base of exact image is open source. I should certainly, by the way, I have so many amazing ideas to implement with exact image, more just-in-time compilation and all crazy fun. But anyway, so we have a test suite that is not public, and not only to help other competing people to develop their stuff. Also, we have customer files in there, so we can also, if we make a test case for customer files, for barcodes and whatnot, then I can't have them public anyway. So even we run test suite, and you would have a test suite, I would think. There's even some shady crap integrated in Xcode. But anyway, Apple of all companies with this kind of resources, they have this T2 freaking security processor, and they can't even reliably, reproducible go through all the vulnerabilities and automatically test a new release against all of the previous ones. Apparently, it's hilarious. If I would be the chief technical security someone there at Apple, I would certainly do that, but it looks like they don't. Not amazing engineering, 2 thumbs up. This is also why I actually intentionally did not load the previous updates, because on iOS, which I probably still have here on my failing freaking old phone here, and I intentionally didn't update, and because I thought, yeah, maybe I jailbreak this for something, and now I quickly updated before Apple starts to not sign this, because all the updates, they are always cryptographically signed by Apple. So what they do is, in a couple of weeks or months time, you will not be able to flash and upgrade previous firmware versions, because each firmware installation of Xcode is contacting the Apple servers and asks for permission and a digital signature to actually flash this. So this is why I quickly upgraded, just in case I want to jailbreak, just for the hacking, cracking fun of it here on my YouTube channel. And if you're into this, maybe, so, but yeah, no guarantee that this works. So if you upgrade, don't blame me if it doesn't work, allegedly, according to some hackers. And let's see what comments we have. Oh, definitely diff the update. So yeah, either they've diffed this, but usually these diffs are super huge. I would think they have just automatically run all of them. Yeah, they probably did some bad merge or reverted something accidentally, or they reintroduced, really recoded a similar issue that changed something accidentally is a similar issue again. Also, yeah, the thing of too complex software, right? Not only firmware is too complex and browsers are too complex, so who will stuff it with all the fancy bubbling UI popcorn nonsense there, for all the feature bloat and whatnot, with all the special integration with Apple Watch and Apple Pencil and whatnot, of all their integrated, connected Bluetooth fun stuff. So yeah, super complex certainly, and then you break something. Kind of continuous integration test before deployment, I assume they have. Yeah, I mean, they certainly probably have some tests, but this test certainly do not, apparently, according to this news, might not include all of this. And yeah, but Heller writes he went to 12.4. Yeah, again, not that you blame me that this doesn't work. Again, I have not jailbreaked in a decade. Fun fact, I have jailbreaked, I said this before, my very first gen iPhone from a decade ago. Brought this new in Florida in 18E when I was there for some embedded security firewall code working stuff with extra code T2 embedded stuff, and brought it there before it was even on sale in Europe. And then I had to jailbreak this because this was SIM locked, net locked. So you had to jailbreak this a decade ago. So and break the broadband firmware there as well to delete the netlock, SIM-lock stuff there, and uncover latest something. It worked. I used uncover latest jailbreak. It worked in the first attempt. Okay, that is cool. Yeah, I thought usually not into jailbreaking, but I thought I asked for which I think probably Dave posted, probably just for the fun of it. I will probably try Linux there on old iOS, iPhone, iPad stuff, probably a couple of months, but yeah, jailbreaking, running some custom code there, maybe even compiling some T2 stuff, some SSH client just for the fun of it, or something of that sort, or other fun stuff. Yeah, thanks for watching. I think this is mostly it. Thanks Helder for confirming that this jailbreak apparently works. That is good news for those who want to jailbreak and install custom features. With that said, yeah, recurring theme here. This is why I started my shout out here of breaking news, because too much stuff is breaking, literally peak bugs, too many security vulnerabilities. But yeah, if you have any comments, in my opinion, somehow we are doing something wrong, right? It's software development. I say this as a computer scientist, studied university, 20 years of professional background here before and after university and my own company. I have to say this is not the level. Imagine if we build skyscrapers, airplanes and infrastructure. Oh wait, we build skyscrapers and infrastructure and airplanes and with such peak bugs. Anyway, yeah, somehow we shouldn't do any of this. Boeing should not self-certify the airplanes, and somehow this IT stuff should be more stable. Basically, I think it boils down to we should develop software fundamentally differently, not clobber together everything we find, but also certainly coming back to earlier, the C, I think it was AA wrote, he is using C. So I agree that C is not too bad. The problem with C is, of course, it has too many esoteric features, too much stuff you can abuse, and so this is, I mean, the problem with C is, as I said earlier, this string functions, and I can write C, right? I do write C, I can write C. I consider myself quite some master level of hackership of C. But even I personally, I would normally really not use C, right? You see even on the DOS examples, on the Voodoo vintage and retro stuff, I'm using a little bit lightweight C++, lightweight because we have only 64K of memory to work with. And also we don't have a C++ runtime, so we can't even use exceptions for such features. We would need to add some custom freestanding support code, which maybe we do soon, as also for our microkernel. I would really suggest C++ is not too much worse than C. I would probably suggest at least use C++, maybe at least the string features. And in my opinion, this little loss of efficiency, if it's like 1% slower, if you're using C++ STL template strings, in my opinion, so much easier to program some string plus equal something and all the other stuff. Is it amazing as Rust memory safety wise? Maybe, certainly not, but in my opinion, using some very lightweight form of C++ in firmware certainly should be the minimum level to go. And then also, I mentioned this previously, I made a video leaking here some secret source we are using for our UI, Lua, super small and simple scripting language, not even the just-in-time compiled version. We are not using it for our UI here in, certainly can show this again, exact scan universal, and yeah, for this UI here, and cross-platform UI written from scratch in Lua. And we're not using the Lua JIT. There is Lua JIT for super high performance. We are intentionally not using this for portability. And this turned out really amazing. Should probably make for all the more stuff, the live stream otherwise becomes too long. I will probably make a video. I wanted to make a video already about like why we should not use C strings, and I probably make a separate video why dynamic languages, dynamically typed languages like Lua are amazing, especially for UI work, because then the stuff can't crash that easily. Should be quite impossible to crash. The biggest bug you can get is a runtime error, runtime type conversion thing or something not there. And in my opinion, that is even a quite good thing. That is similar to Objective-C. In Objective-C, if you have a null pointer in Apple's Objective-C and you call something, a method on a null pointer in C++, this crashes. Null pointer dereference in Objective-C, this does nothing. Invoking a method, Objective-C method on a null pointer object does nothing. Maybe not even a warning, not sure. At least it's not crashing. And this is actually not too bad, right? If you have a huge application like ExactScan and there is some bug, which of course we have very little bugs, amazing stuff. But imagine there is a bug, you click a button that is something not correctly corrected with some memory deallocated or whatever, and the pointer is null or not yet allocated or whatever. It doesn't crash, right? And you can still use the app, the rest of the app, you can still save your stuff. If this would be old-fashioned C or C++, it would crash with null pointer, dereference, segmentation fault. And this is similar in Lua, right? So if you have something, the worst case, even if something goes wrong with whatsoever dynamic runtime typing, accessing something that's not there and so on, you get a runtime error that does not need to be the end, right? It doesn't need to be an oops, a panic, that's the whole stuff crashing and disappearing. So that is actually quite nice, in my opinion, that worst case it doesn't crash. Also strings, of course, again for UI stuff, just concatenating strings, hash lookup in tables, key value stuff all over the place. In my opinion, amazing stuff. Probably should make a dedicated video about this. Let's see some comments in the audience, whether it's people slack off .NET but got code from years ago that still works okay. The problem with CSEC faults, yeah, I think that's because lacks node modules. Anything that's node is just broken by default. Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, welcome everyone, Alex. So yeah, we're mostly through. That is my things. Probably we should really to bring this to the next level. The problem, of course, with stuff like .NET, of course, .NET like invented at Microsoft, and then previously one never knew if Microsoft would eventually sue there over the mono stuff of all the copied APIs. Of course, nowadays Microsoft is more cool about this, even brought this company as far as I remember, and now has stuff open source themselves. But this is, of course, decades after the fact. Some problem like Java and .NET often is the runtime is so huge. This is why I'm more of a fan of stuff like Lua. At least the runtime is super small and compact, and as you recurring audience knows, I'm a fan of keeping stuff stupid, minimally simple, and a runtime certainly can help for that. Also for firmware, certainly if you write firmware, depending of course on what firmware, writing a firmware like BIOS kind of stuff in Java or .NET might be not the most trivial, but at least some more C++ with string classes and stuff is already a huge attack vector that usually on all the string handling is solved then as a first step in that regard. But everyone watching this later, as usual, leave comments here. As usual, when we keep discussing stuff, live streams get a little bit long, so it's probably time to end it here. And of course, then we just get another comment. .NET Core is pretty light, about 10 times faster than old stuff, plus they've managed code with a decent language. Yeah, again, it depends what you're doing. If you are doing a BIOS firmware of a PC stuff, it's something else than firmware of an SS point there. If you're using a Linux kernel, and then .NET Core might be a viable option. especially for other Internet of Things device. But again, it depends what kind of CPU you have in there. If it's a thermostat, like intelligent thermostat or temperature sensor and all this fun stuff, then you might not even have enough space for that .NET Core. In that case, I would suggest at least go with a lightweight form of C++, maybe not the latest and greatest where the STL also becomes already a megabyte, but at least. By the way, fun fact, not that this is the greatest for hot plug stuff in the Rock Linux days. I have a very minimal embedded STL that is only the very start. Where would that be? Probably something of that. So this is completely not feature-rich embedded STL, but it's just some strings. It's most low-level stuff. I've done this for hotplug++ when I wanted, before we had UDEV, like 15 years. You see, how long do I Linux? Yeah, I do Linux so long that I know the time before systemd and UDEV, and there was hotplug scripts, and for that, maybe I should do UDEV in C++, maybe another winter. But so this is totally not feature rich, just the bare minimums, and of course totally not standard compliant, yeah, to do, but at least some little stuff like everything. So basically all the small stuff I needed that I intuitively needed when I wrote hotplug++ 15 years ago. If you need something totally small, just the bare minimum, just some, like deck and whatnot. So of course this is not feature complete and bug free and stuff. This is just like 15 years ago, a little bit. It might be a help. So if you have only like 64K or something on some ST, whatever, AVR, 8-bit, whatever stuff, maybe there are others. Certainly there are others, more feature rich stuff. But yeah, you can also, you see even 15 years ago, you could write a small scale STL with just the pure minimum stuff you needed back in the day. Worked for that. Just if you are interested in that. Yeah, but that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Also, still need to figure out why the YouTube Live dashboard only works on the ThinkPad, but at least it works on the ThinkPad. So yeah, as I mentioned on the beginning of the stream, if you're interested in the details. Thanks for watching. Hope I see you soon, and have a good day or night, and till next time.